Well, if you've been anywhere in Jacksonville, then you've seen her. Or perhaps you've heard her on WJCT with Melissa Ross, or read something she wrote in a local magazine. She's so well known that she's just called the Spectator. Please welcome Kerry Speckman.
Oh, guess we better. Oh! Did I mention I'm clumsy? Oh! Typical. I call this hashtag classic Kerry. Thank you. Why, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. What? Oh! I am so not even doing this on purpose. I promise you. I promise you. So anyway, I realize I'm overdressed for this event, but I just wanted to make sure that nobody forgot me. And also, I borrowed this dress from a friend because I had a very fancy schmancy event to go to, and I have to return it to her, and I love it, so I just wanted to wear it one more time. 2 months ago, when Jeanine asked me to participate, and this is my brave, well, we got some slippery, these are really slippery sheets. I need to put this over here. 2 months ago, when Jeanine asked me to participate in This Is My Brave, I said yes, without hesitation. I've always been open about my mental illnesses. Never once have I felt ashamed. In fact, it feels strange when anyone refers to me as brave. Maybe that's because I don't remember feeling depressed. As a kid, I was very active doing the typical kid things. I played freeze tag. I played kickball. I played with Barbie dolls. I took piano lessons. I was a brownie, a Girl Scout. I played basketball. But I spent a lot of time alone, too. Mostly reading and making my own magazines. I also sat in my closet with my tape recorder, which some of you may need to Google what a tape recorder is. And I recorded talk shows with celebrity guests like John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn. And no, I will not be doing any of those impressions here tonight. My parents like to call it, Kerry entertains herself. I used to sleep a lot, to the point where I would go to bed wearing the clothes I was going to wear to school the next day because I didn't want to waste the 2 minutes of sleep it would have taken me to get dressed. And I was a chronic worrier. When my family planned a trip to New York City, I was petrified we were going to be shot by the Son of Sam. I think I just dated myself with that reference. Some of you may need to look up Google Son of Sam also. We had an addition built on the second floor of our house, and I hardly went in it because I was convinced it was going to collapse at any moment. If my parents drove 1 mile over the speed limit, I thought we were all going to die. At the time, I thought these behaviors were normal. It didn't cross my mind not one of my friends slept until noon every Saturday, which I would have also done on Sunday, except that I was forced to go to church. I knew, and I didn't know anyone who spent time sitting in their closets alone. Before I get to my eventual diagnosis, I need to give you a little bit of a backstory. Mental illness runs in my family. Depression, anxiety, alcoholism, attention deficit disorder. Of course, that didn't exist back then. This, of course, is my own opinion, since no one in my family ever saw a therapist or was diagnosed. God forbid anyone in my family talked about their feelings. I call this the denial club. The first rule of denial club, you do not talk about denial club. The second rule of denial club is you do not talk about denial club. That was a Fight Club reference in case you missed it. All of this became patently clear to me when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1977. I was 10 years old. When we would visit her in the hospital, my dad would tell me not to cry. Be strong for Mom, he would say. During her 4 years of being sick, I only remember crying once or twice. She died in 1981, and I went to school the next day. 6th grade is when I believe my depression issues got real. I know this because I have essays I wrote back then. The funny thing is I have read these many times over the years because I thought they were amusing with how I misused words and misspelled, which is very painful for my OCPD to be reading right now. But last year I read these and I realized that I was depressed in 6th grade. I'm going to read you one of them. Written October 7th, 1977. It was a dark, stormy night. I was alone. The lightning made the lights flicker rapidly. I sat silently. All of a sudden, I heard shrilling screams and eerie noises. The first thing that came to my mind was to go up to the hilltop mansion and investigate. I opened the door and walked out into the seemingly endless night. I courageously climbed the steep, treacherous overhang. I suspect treacherous was probably a vocabulary word that I had to throw in. Treacherous overhang to reach my destiny. I no longer had to witness the eerie noises. I dropped 300 feet down and fell to my death. I was in 6th grade. There are lots of other stories. I swore I wasn't going to cry, and I put on mascara, and then I'm like, I shouldn't because I'm not going to cry, but anyway. So there's many of these. I know. There are a handful of these stories talking about eternal darkness, and I'm never going to go out again, and someone greeted me at a door with a loaded revolver, all kinds of stuff that my teacher in 6th grade, this shows you how little depression was discussed or diagnosed, especially in a 6th grader. This one he wrote good on in his red pencil, and this one he wrote nice. That's the one where I never went out again. But I forgive you, Mr. Cheminus, you did not know any better. Years passed. I graduated from high school and college, JU. But it wasn't until the early 90s when I was getting my master's degree in mental health counseling, of all things, that I was diagnosed with depression. As part of the program, we were required to see a therapist. I actually saw my first therapist back in college, not because I needed it, but because my friends thought I was too negative and bitter, and they didn't want to be around me. So during my first session with this therapist when I was in school, she asked me if I'd ever been diagnosed with depression. I looked at her like she had pink and purple hair, and then she said, "Look at this list of symptoms and tell me if you've ever experienced any of these. Difficulty concentrating and making decisions? Check. Feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, irritability, restlessness? Check. Excessive sleeping? Check, 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 check. Feelings of hopelessness and or pessimism? Check. Persistent sad, anxious, or empty feelings? Check. Thoughts of suicide or suicide attempts? Thankfully, no check on that one. I read the list and I handed it back to her and I said, yeah, so I pretty much have all these, which point? I assumed everybody felt like I did. She gave me an initial diagnosis of clinical depression and referred me to a psychiatrist. I was totally confused. I mean, why the hell did I need to go to a psychiatrist? Only crazy people go to psychiatrists. After a lengthy discussion and review of my therapist's notes, my doctor prescribed an antidepressant. I don't remember which one because I've been on pretty much every one there is, and it was a long time ago. We went through months of tweaking my medications, the dosages, the combinations, until about 5 years ago, we were still tweaking them. Eventually, I was also diagnosed with anxiety disorder, obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, and seasonal affective disorder. Today, I take Prozac, Lamictal, and Klonopin every day when I remember, and will for the rest of my life. My life has changed dramatically since my first diagnosis. I no longer feel worthless or empty. I'm not irritable 24/7, at least not on a regular basis. The excessive sleeping, however, still persists. That is not to say I don't continue to have issues. This week, in fact, was a bad one for me. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. I cried, and we're talking the ugly cry, every day. And I actually have written on here, today is the first day I haven't shed a tear, so we'll just cross that part out because I already have. Those of you who don't know me well or at all would probably never guess I'm depressed. I mean, look at me. And that is one of the main things I want to convey to you tonight. Depression doesn't have a look. It doesn't discriminate based on race or age or height or weight or gender. Case in point, recently, Chris Cornell, who some of you may need to Google, some of you over the age of 40, he was in a band called Soundgarden. They'd won Grammys, sold millions of records. He was rich, famous, and worshipped, and yet he hanged himself at the age of 52. The other thing I want you to realize is you are not alone. If you have been diagnosed with mental illness or you think you might have one, there are millions, literally millions, of other people in America who are living with it too. The key and the one thing I want you to take home from this tonight is there is no logical reason for you to be ashamed. Mental illness is a disease. I didn't choose this life for myself any more than my mom chose to have cancer. And on a personal note, I want to thank the people who have supported and loved me and continue to do so today. It's not always easy being my friend. I have mood swings. I'm unreliable. I procrastinate. Speaking of which, I wrote this. I started writing it today at 11. And thank you, Heather, for bringing it to me printed out like 5 minutes before this started. Oh, no. Avalanche. I'm unreliable, I procrastinate, I sleep a lot, I don't show up for things, or I sneak out without telling anyone. And now I've posted this on Facebook a couple times, so those of you who know me, I've already heard it, but I wanted to say it because it's very important to me. I realized probably in the last couple weeks, hot mic, and a couple weeks ago, it's not just, I'm not the only one living with my depression. Everyone who knows me lives with it too. So this is a part of a song from Alanis Morissette, but I want to dedicate to my friends. Many of you are here today. You see everything. You see every part. You see all my light, and you love my dark. You dig everything of which I'm ashamed, and there's nothing to which you can't relate, and you're still here. Thank you.